Hi, everyone. Glad you are able to join us today. My name is Brian Miller. I am the Educator Community Manager at Wonder Workshop, creators of Dash and Dot Robots. And we're so excited to have you all here today and joining us and joining two very special guests as we talk to you today about Funding 101, grants to help bring Dash and Dot to your school. And one of the initiatives that we're working on with the new Wonder League is having the opportunity for clubs and organizations and schools to create a coding club within your schools. And many times schools and communities ask, how can we afford to bring these amazing robots into our schools? Well, what we've done is we've put together a great webinar for you today with two experts in grants and fundraising who are going to be able to share some of their informational resources along with the ability to answer some questions that you may have. So we're really excited to start, and as you all know, you are now members of our Wonder League because for you signing up, you received exclusive access to this special webinar. So we're really excited to have you joining us as club members, and we can't wait to start the upcoming school year with you and sharing in the excitement and learning all the amazing things that you're doing with Dash and Dot. With that said, we are going to be using a hashtag today, and because of Big Marker's integration with Twitter, we're able to connect Twitter directly into our feed. So we're using the hashtag WonderLeague, and if you notice in our chat window, you are able to post a message, and there is a tweet button, and as long as you use the hashtag WonderLeague, you'll be able to share that out with the entire world so they can hear and learn about all the amazing things that we're learning today. So be sure to use the hashtag WonderLeague with all of your messages if you want that to get tweeted out. Also, the chat window is meant for you to be able to have any questions answered. I will be continuing through here moderating at this point any questions that may occur. So we are able to have the opportunity to converse and answer any questions that you may have. I see that, Pam, are you able to hear? If someone could post a message if they're able to hear okay, that would be greatly appreciated in the chat window just to make sure. All right, so we hear. Sometimes the audio is a little blurry. I can hear. Let's see if we can switch the mic. All right. Are we able to hear any better now? Wonderful. All right, so at this point, I would like to go ahead and introduce Jenny and Lori from Red Rock Reports, who are going to be sharing with us some of this great information about grants and resources that we can use within our school. So Jenny and Lori, I'm going to go ahead and let you both take it away.
Hi, my name is Jenny House, and I am the president of Red Rock Reports. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a background so you understand where I'm coming from. I was a teacher, a principal, and in the district office. In every position that I had, I was always looking for money to be able to run special programs, buy equipment, buy books, anything. I was always looking for extra money. Then I went to Hewlett-Packard and then Apple for quite a while. And, you know, when I was with those companies, it was, how can we help schools to find the money to buy our product? And then I did 3 startups, and always the investors are saying, hey, you know, where's the market on this? We want to make sure that, you know, there is an investment here. So I was always looking for money for them. So just like all of you, it's where's the money? So what we're going to do today is go through where the money is. We're going to give you a big picture of education funding and then a snapshot of the current funding landscape because things are changing in Washington, D.C. and not just on the elections. There's a lot of things happening that will be really important for you to know. And then we're going to talk about some tools to help you find the funds that Wonder Workshop will provide for you, a funding matrix and a grant template. And finally, I'm going to talk about how to pursue a grant, because if, you can't find the money that's there by formula or by taxes in your area, then you can always go for a grant. So I'm going to give you some tips on that, and finally a call to action. So I hope that sounds like it'll meet your needs. The big picture. What you always want to remember is the money comes from 4 different sources. The federal government gives money to your school district, and we'll talk about how much that is as we go forward. And then there's the state money, and that really is, all the wonderful taxes that you're paying to your state. And that comes from, income tax, sales tax, sometimes special levies, but that's where the state money comes from. The local money, a lot of times there's local taxes or local initiatives that may contribute to yours. And finally, private funds. And private funds can come from corporations, they can come from family endowments, they can come from local, foundations. So we're going to talk a little bit about those, but those are usually competitive. So let's go and look at how much you really get. So remember I said state, local, and federal. Let's talk about the private a little bit later. 85% of state and local money, that's about the average that goes to the personnel in your school district. The teachers, the principals, the administration, also the classified employees that take wonderful care of your schools. So that's 85%. Well, that's 15%. When I was buying, the consumables, replacing old textbooks, a lot of times, even some of your subscriptions come out of that. So that 15% gets eaten up really, really, really fast. So where are we going to get the money? Look at that federal. It only comprises about 8 to 10% of your budget, but the majority of that can be used for discretionary purposes. And that's what Lori and I are going to spend a lot of time talking about today. So really, we're going to focus on that federal money as opposed to the state and local, because the different buckets of federal money allow you to buy products like Wonder Workshop products. So that's what we're going to spend the time on. So common sources of federal funding, where does that money come from? Well, some of the money we're going to talk about today comes directly from the White House, not Department of Education. Others come, that middle triangle, that is the Department of Education. And that's the majority of what you get is from the Department of Education. But sometimes it's Department of Labor. These days, because of the shortage of workers in computer science, not only is education kicking in money and the White House, but also the Department of Labor. Because here to this point, we've been hiring people from other countries. Well, that doesn't make sense when really we've got so many wonderful, intelligent people in our own country. So that's why we look at Department of Labor and Education and the White House. And then that brown triangle over to your right, that's the Department of Justice. The juvenile justice system receives a lot of money, as does the whole justice system, to continue the education of the people that are in the system. And, so that they can complete their high school graduation, they can get credentials for other employment, such as plumbing, transportation, recreation, a lot of different things in there. So Department of Justice also gets a lot. But I would bet that the most of you on this really are education. That's where the majority of the money comes from. So let's spend a little more time there. So the ones that we're going to focus on today are Title I, Part A. That is the biggest one, and we've got some slides specifically about that. And that, your students that are from low social focus on, hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. They really don't focus on the normal student, that is from an area of high socioeconomic. They really want to make sure that the lower socioeconomic have the same opportunities and access to high-quality teachers and high-quality materials as the rest of the students. So that's Title I. IDEA is your special education, and we'll get into more details about that. Hear more about that. The 21st century community learning centers. This is an after-school, before-school, lunchtime program for mentoring and coaching. And Dot and Dash absolutely are fantastic for those, different programs. And so this is a competitive grant. We'll talk more about that. REAP is your rural education program. For those of you in schools in rural, remote areas, we're going to talk about an extra fund for you to have that same access as well. So stay tuned on that one. And there are two different parts to it, both of them for $87.9 million. So you'll hear more about that. If you're working with a university, and we know some of you work very closely with them, there's also the National Science Foundation has a STEM Plus C program, and it's a competitive grant that really is focusing on preparing students for careers in computer science and STEM. And we'll talk about that. And finally, ending with one from the White House, this is a computer science for all program. That's really, we're waiting to hear more details, but it's a mere $4 billion. So we will talk a little bit more about that one. So I'm going to turn this over now to Lori, who's going to talk about Title I. So Lori, it's all to you. Can we hear Lori yet?
No, not yet. Lori, are you able to hear us?
You know what? Since we can't hear Lori, I'll jump in. So the funds go to the public schools with a higher percentage to students from low-income families, okay? And about 80% of the schools in the country have students that qualify for Title I. It's used to help them also, as I said, have that same opportunity and meet high academic content and achievement standards. It's often used to pay for instructional costs. So your instructional aids may
All right, Lori, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. You can, Jenny. We're going to have Lori continue on from here.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, my mic was not operating for a moment there. Greetings, everyone. My name is Lori Dufer-Yum. I'm a funding analyst at Liquid Jenny.
Sounds like we're still having some problems there.
Laura, can you hear me?
Also,
No, Jenny, we're okay. We're connected.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Lori.
Okay, great. Then I'll continue on, not hold you guys up anymore. So Title I, I'm sorry if I missed this or if I'm repeating it, but it's the cornerstone of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, first signed into law in 1965, more recently known as No Child Left Behind, and now part of the Every Student Succeeds Act. Its intention is to go to those schools that have the highest percentage of economically disadvantaged families and students. And the intent of the funds are to help students meet challenging state content standards, and in the case of No Child Left Behind, there were also achievement standards requirements that students had to meet. Most often, it's used to pay for instructional costs such as teachers, reading specialists, math tutors, and the like. And one of the stipulations of the program for program guidance is that strategies must be effective for scientifically based research. However, there are some misconceptions about Title I, some things that you probably don't know. So Title I is commonly thought to be restricted for only reading and math. That's not actually a requirement of the federal statute. Title I can be used to improve academic achievement in all core subject areas. That includes STEM. It can also be used for any range of non-instructional costs, things like attendance incentive of programs, improving curriculum quality, family engagement and community engagement, school climate interventions, all these sorts of things are permitted. And there's two types of programs in Title I. There's something called targeted assistance, where only those students who are eligible for the economic index formula receive services, and they must be identified. And in schools for which the poverty percentage is 40% or higher, those are school-wide programs. And in that case, the students don't have to be specifically identified, targeted, and tracked, but the entire school benefits from the interventions that Title I pays for. Sorry about that. This is jumping. There we go. So 21st Century Community Learning Centers. These are the before school, after school, and summer programs. 5-year grants are awarded on a somewhat competitive basis. These come down as formula funds from the federal government to states, and then local entities must apply for these grants that are then awarded for 5 years. The intention of these centers is to provide academic assistance to help students achieve. Once again, these are targeted for the low-income, low-achieving schools and communities. And they also are used to provide academic enrichment, things that complement the core academic program. And those are things like STEM activities, arts, music, things along those lines. Now, an interesting thing about the 21st Century Community Learning Centers that you may not know is that it's not just a school-based program, but they also, eligible entities also include cities, counties, community agencies, think, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, faith-based organizations can also apply, and other public and private entities. There are not restrictions based on that. And this is something that is a creative way to utilize this program. Purchases that are made for a 21st Century Community Learning Center, such as technology, can be shared with a school site if it is used when the Learning Center is not in session. Now, the one stipulation here to be in compliance with the guidance is that there must be cost sharing. So if, for example, the school is using the items, the technology, or the program 20% of the time, the expectation is that they will share 20% of the cost. But that's really kind of a nice way to be able to accomplish something in two settings and not have the full burden of the cost sit on one budget. The REAP program is a formula program, comes to the government, to eligible districts, and there are actually two components of this program. There's the rural and low income and small rural schools. The reason they get extra funding is because they're generally just too small to be able to compete for funding in the way that other districts can. So this funding is used for, really it's very flexible. It supplements the funding that they get from other federal programs. They can combine it, and they can use it for any expenditure that's allowable under programs such as Title I, Title II, Title III, the Safe and Drug-Free Schools, as well as professional development. If you don't know whether you are one of those programs, every state publishes a list of REAP schools as well as the funding allocation. This is not competitive. Now here's something new, which is really exciting. This comes from the White House, and it's called Computer Science for All. This was in the education budget. However, it's in the appropriations process at the moment. So during that process, things can change. Details of the program can change. The amount of funding can change. But as it stands right now, it's $4 billion over 3 years. In order to receive funding, states will have to submit a 5-year plan for how they will effectively use or introduce computer science into their schools. And another component of the program is a $100 million competitive grant for districts, such that they can use for expanding computer science learning opportunities preschool through 12th grade. The focus of this program, again, is on traditionally underrepresented students, and that includes females, minorities, students who are English language learners, migratory students, IDEA qualified students. Those are those students who have learning disabilities. So this is something that we're really looking forward to learning more details on. Some of the proposed uses for this program are high-quality instructional materials, regional partnerships, and supporting and training computer science teachers, although those are probably most likely at the high school level. I'm going to now pass this back over to Jenny to cover IDEA.
Okay, go ahead.
So IDEA, and I just want to, I've been reading some of the questions that have come through, and I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One is, some of you are from private schools, and the good news is that you do get Title I money, and this program that I'm just about to talk about is Special Ed, IDEA. That is available, but your private school needs to work with the public school in your school district in your area. And the way the government gives you the money is it goes to the local public school district, and then the public school district gives it to the local private school. So you have to work together to get that money. Another question came up about the 21st Century Community Learning Center. Somebody said that you can only use it for the after-school programs, and then you have to keep it under lock and key. Actually, the regulations don't read that way. You can use it during the day, but as Lori said, it must be available for any of the after school, lunchtime, before school, evening. It must be available for the community learning center programs at that time. So, that's just a little tip to you. So IDEA, this is your special education. It's the second largest program that the federal government does. And it is a very interesting program because all of the students that are on IEPs or individual education plans, they are funded through this. And it's, that's a lot of money. But there's an interesting part that you need to remember. 15% of the $11.9 billion must be set aside for intervention for students that we call bubble children. So these are kids that some days they're performing at the 43rd percentile. Another day they could be at the 54th percentile. So they're really hovering around that 50% proficiency. So those children, the goal of that 15% is to keep them from being permanently identified special ed. And this is because of all the lawsuits against children inappropriately being placed in special ed. Sometimes it was racial, sometimes it was socioeconomic. There were a lot of reasons that these lawsuits were, very successful against the school districts. So 15% is before they have IEPs to get those bubble children there. So, using products like Dot and Dash to really, stimulate these children to learn more, to do more activities with them, but you need to track them almost on a daily basis to make sure that they aren't falling to that 43rd percentile again, that they are consistently moving up above that 50% performance. So what can you do with this money? You can provide, some of the money, and I will say this, will be used for instructional aids just like Title I. But the rest of the money is for education and related services to get these children performing at a high level. Sometimes they're physically handicapped. Sometimes, they can be on the autism spectrum. They can be ADD. There's many, many reasons that a child is identified for special services. So really, it's to be able to buy the materials, the assets that will help these children learn. Now, just like with Title I, originally everybody was just focusing on reading and math. But now we've incorporated STEM. And the reason is, a big part, if you read the regulations of special ed, is to prepare these students for success in college and careers. Okay? So that's why STEM is so important, for these children to also be able to succeed. So allowable purchases are technology and equipment that meets the needs of these children. So, you really got to look at their disability and make sure that the product is appropriate for the students with that disability when you're buying it, and supports the implementation of their IEP, their instructional education plan. So it's a great program for these children. Most of the states also kick in extra money because the federal, when you think of $11.9 billion, you think that would serve everybody, but there are so many children in the program that states kick in extra money as well. Oops, sorry. So I'll kick this back to Lori. This is a new program called Student important academic enrichment grant. And this is from the new Every Student Succeeds Act, which after Lori finishes, I'm going to go into more detail about that. But Lori, do you want to continue on this one?
Sure. Can you hear me again?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. I'm getting a little feedback. I don't know what this program is new and it's old at the same time. What it really is it combines funding streams from many of the pre-existing programs, so there's a bigger bucket and a more flexible bucket for that state and local control that is really core to the Every Student Succeeds Act. So the overall umbrella intent of this program is to improve academic achievement, and there are several ways that they aim to do that. One of which is to provide all students with access to a well-rounded education. Another is to improve school conditions for learning, and what that really means is things like anti-bullying programs, reduce discipline, that sort of thing, and to improve the use of technology in order to improve academic achievement and digital literacy. And so to give you just a little bit more information on what this means in terms of a well-rounded education, that includes such things as STEM education, American history, arts and music, things that are not just necessarily part of the core curriculum, but that complement the core academic curriculum to provide those students with additional extended learning opportunities. The distribution formula will be based on a percentage of Title I-A funds. So again, this benefits those students that are in the lower socioeconomic strata and provides them an opportunity to improve their achievement. I think I'm passing it back to Jenny at this point.
Jenny, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. So one of the big things now that I just want to talk about, a lot of you are teachers on here, and you're sitting there going, why do I need to know all of this? You know, what I learned when I was a teacher is what money is our district getting, and how can I tap into that? And what I found from many of the teachers did not know what money the district had, so they never even knew that they could have access to that. So it really, really is important for you, no matter what position you're in, to know the kinds of funds that are there. And when you think about buying products like Dot and Dash, what kinds of funds are available? And then I can talk to my principal, I can help my principal talk to them, or I can talk to somebody it depends on the size of your district, I can talk to somebody in the district office myself and find out. So, don't think that this isn't appropriate for you if you're a teacher, because you need to know all of the good things. When I was in the district office, it was funny, there were some teachers who knew it better than I did. And they would come in, hey, Jenny, I know you're getting this money. How can I get some of it? And you know what? It's the squeaky wheel that gets the money a lot of times. So there are two types of federal funds. Some of them are formula and some of them are competitive. When you say formula, it depends on the number of students that just based on, the federal government gives us the money based on that category. So let's think of Title I. How many in your classroom or your school qualify for Title I? Okay, so that money comes no matter what. And the way the federal government knows is in September, after you know how many kids are going to be in your classroom, what kinds of kids, how many are ELL, how many of them are Title I, how many of them are special ed, and then the school rolls up a report to the district office, and then the district office rolls that to the state, and then the state gives it to the federal government. Federal government then, based on those numbers, rolls it back down, and it doesn't come directly to your school. It comes to your district office, and then the district office allocates it to the schools based on those numbers. So that's the formula funds. Competitive funds are like the 21st Century Community Learning Center. Yes, like Lori said, the state gets it based on the number of Title I, but then they conduct competitions for the grants in the states, okay? So it's, a little bit of both. So I kind of took our funds and put it into two buckets. I'm not going to read these. You'll have the slides later. Brian will tell you how you can get these slides. But all of the ones on the left come just by formula, and then on the right, it comes, competitions are done with that money. Okay? Now, I said that there's going to be a big change at the beginning. You've all been operating under No Child Left Behind. That's the vernacular for the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So No Child Left Behind was totally in place for 15-16. Well, as of December 2015, Congress finally reauthorized the act, and now they call it Every Student Succeeds Act, and you'll hear people call it ESSA. But it doesn't go into full implementation until 2017. So we're in what's called a transition year, and I'm going to go into what that means. So technically, it was passed last December, but the U.S. Department, there's a big, big change. We all used to march to the rules of the U.S. Department of Education. Well, Congress said, no, our country, we're not doing that anymore. The U.S. Department of Education now gives life guidance, but the states and the districts decide what they're going to do with the money, okay? So what's happening right now is the U.S. Department of Education, with committees and regional meetings for feedback, are coming up with the right guidance in terms of rulemaking. So basically, if you think about an outline of rules, that then the states say, okay, if these are the rules, then this is how we're going to do it. And so I live in California. This is how we're going to do it here, okay? So this is going to be taking place all the way through October, okay? Then, and actually some of the states have already started some planning meetings because they've read the law, they kind of know basically what's going to happen. But for all the way through 16-17 school year, there's going to be the plans of how they're going to implement the rules. So, and the states have to do it as well as the districts. So get ready, you're going to be doing these planning meetings. And that includes how you're going to spend the money. And then in 2017-18, you're rock and roll. Everybody in the country is going to be on the new rules. Now, there could be 50 different sets of rules because each state can do its own. So federal, states, districts, and schools will have the implementation. So it's going to be pretty interesting. So teachers have to be involved, administrators have to be involved, and state departments have to be involved, as well as county offices of education or regional entities, BOCES, educational service districts, et cetera, et cetera. So also, we're wrapping up right now the 15-16 budget, which ends on June 30th. Then 16-17, so you say, wait a minute, Jenny, if, it really doesn't start till 17-18, what's the budget that we're going to have for this coming year? It's exactly the same as last year, okay? 15-16 is going to be repeated. The federal government is going to give the same amount of money. So it's exactly the same, except for school improvement grants. Those were the failing schools that got grants for 3 to 4 years to improve their schools. Now, as of last week, I talked to the Department of Education, and they're not sure exactly when those are going to end. No new schools will be chosen, for sure. But what about, if you're on a 3-year grant and you've only finished 1 year, what about your second and third years? We're still waiting to hear, so stay tuned on that one. Also, there are going to be 7 states selected to pilot ESSA in the 16-17 year, especially accountability and assessment. We don't know who those are. We know a lot of states have thrown in their hats, but stay tuned on who those are, because if you're in those states, you may be getting some extra assistance, which might mean some extra money. So stay tuned on what that'll be. Remember I said at the beginning you're going to be getting some tools from Wonder Workshop that are going to be available? Well, one of them is a funding matrix. And basically it has some information about your state and the money that's going to be available this year that you could buy products like Wonder Workshop's Dot and Dash. So I'm just going to go quickly through this because you'll see the matrices when Wonder Workshop posts them. But you'll see the name of the program, and then every state will have, how much money is available in your state. So that'll give you kind of a clue. Also, kind of the priorities. What's the easiest money to get? And what would be a little bit harder, such as having to write a grant for it. So the priorities are also there. Then there's funding details. So you say, I've never really talked to anybody in my district office. The first district I was in had 76 schools. So we all didn't run into the district office. So who manages it? So, there's different titles because different districts are constructed differently. So these are, different titles that might be managing that fund. Also a URL for more information. And the important thing is, why can I use this money to buy Wonder Workshop products? That's really important because we go through the regulations and make sure that it is appropriate to use the money for this. Then we've also drilled down into a few states a little bit deeper: California, Florida, Illinois, New York, and Texas. And some different funds that are there. I noticed one of the questions that somebody had was, what about charter schools? All of the funds that we've talked about, if they're public charter schools, it's exactly the same. You get those same funds. As well as public charter schools get some additional money in these states. And you can look at those on the funding matrix. And also it has the grade ranges, program descriptions, so hopefully that's of use to you. And more state details about applications and some tips for you. So hopefully this is a useful one. We also put together a grant template. And, one thing you ought to know about, if you haven't written grants before, whether you're a teacher, a principal, or someone in the district office, or you might just be a parent who is writing grants for your school, about 80% of the information in a grant is the same from grant to grant. So what I would recommend, even if you aren't applying right now, is that you get this information together so that when a grant comes out, sometimes you only have 2 weeks to put it together. So if you gathered this information before, that would really be helpful. So what's a project that no matter what the grant you want to do for this year. So you kind of write a project narrative. What's the story? What am I going to do? How am I going to? And there's really only two things that grants care about. Same thing as federal government. Improving student achievement and or improving teacher quality. Those are the big kahunas. So your project narrative should talk about how you're going to improve this by this project. Then you're going to talk about your goals and objectives. How are you going to do this? What are the goals and how are you going to do this? What's your target student population? How are you going to implement the content? Are you going to have books? Are you going to have robots? Are you going to have, software? What's all the different things? Are you going to have professional development? How are you going to support the teachers, et cetera, et cetera? And a big one on any grant is how are you going to measure the success? Because if I'm getting, and I've read a lot of federal grants and state grants, and this is where a lot of them fall off, the evaluation. How do you know if what you've done in this project really has improved student achievement or teacher quality? That's a big one. And the team. Who's managing this? And, when you write about your team that's managing it, make sure there's somebody who has managed a grant before. We're very reluctant to give big grants to people that have never managed a grant. Because how do we know that you're going to do a good job? So if you really want to have on that team somebody who has managed a grant and put that in their bios, okay? So you really want a bio of the team that's going to be managing this. And, of course, the budget. The budget, and sometimes you will put in a budget and then you get the grant and you say, wait a minute, I have found something that actually is better than what we put in the original budget. You can always change things. You can always change things. You just need, whoever the granting agency is, you just need to let them know that you've substituted something. And the reason why is this is better in terms of what you had in there before. When you talk to the vendors for, getting the budget, you really want to get this information from them. Their product description, how do they train the teachers? Do they have YouTube videos? Do they come to your school and do professional development? How does the teacher, you don't have any time to learn all this stuff, so how do they get you up to speed so that you can really use their product effectively? How are they helping measure whether the student is, improving student achievement? What's the research? Now, you're going to see in all the federal money, they want to see proof of the effectiveness of these products. Well, if it's a new company, they really want to know how the teacher or how the product was developed based on what research, if there's no tracking the research to make it happen. So if it's a new company, it's okay if they don't have a lot of proof of improving student achievement, but what you do want to have is the proof of the research that this product was developed on, okay? So one or the other. Also, what's their support? If the product breaks down, if the software crashes, what's the support? Is it 24 hours? Is it, available anytime, 24/7? What's that? Also, you want to have bios of their executives. And the reason this happens, and this is really for very big grants, a lot of companies went under during the dot-com bust. So they really want to see that there's a good company, it's going to be around, the entire time of this grant. And they want 3 reference sites. So who's a reference site that really has used Dot and Dash, the children have improved, what did they improve, et cetera, et cetera. So you want 3 reference sites from your vendors. So in the grant template, this information is in there. And again, Brian will tell you how to get that. Private funding. Remember the local and the private. So the private is corporate, community, or family foundations. It's very important that all 3, so a company like the Dell Foundation, the Hewlett-Packard, the Hewlett Foundation, there's lots of fun ones. The Supergirl grant, and it's for teachers for extra professional development. There are a ton of grants that don't even get applied for each year. There are community grants. The Galveston Foundation would be an example if you're down in Galveston, Texas. Family foundations. A lot of, the Zuckerbergs, you've probably heard from Facebook, Priscilla and all of a sudden I can't remember his first name, but they have a huge foundation for, improving STEM. So, those are some great examples. I've also put in some grant sites from you. And these are, each one of them has grants that are coming out all the time. The reason I put these here is they're really good at refreshing the grants as new ones are coming out. The grant plan has all sizes. Grant Wrangler is great for teachers. It has everything from a $500 to a $5,000. Really easy to apply for, great grants. So Grant Wrangler is great. Grant Alert, new ones that are coming out. And Edutopia, I know Lori says this is her very favorite grant source. So, take a look at all 4 of them. There are many, many more, but these are kind of our favorite 4 that teachers have had great success getting grants, principals have, they're great ones for you. Your call to action is know what funds, and remember, you teachers, you're saying, wait a minute, this sounds like it's for administrators. No, you've got to know what money your district has so you can tap into that. Remember one very important thing. Somebody may say in the district office, no, I only, manage this. In 2009, the federal government said you can commingle funds, meaning you can take some of your Title I money, you can take some of your special ed money, some of your 21st century community. You can, if you're getting a big grant, or buying something really big, you can put all that money together. The trick is, if you're using like Title I money, you can only use the percentage of this pot, the same percentage as the number of Title I students that you're going to serve in that grant, or the same for special ed. Don't forget to look at all of your funding options, federal, state, local, and private, and get your story ready. I can't tell you how often I would find out about a grant, and I'd find out about it on Thursday, and it was due the following Tuesday. If I had everything together, stored in one place, I could apply for that. But if I had to go from scratch, I let it go and missed that money. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Brian to facilitate Q&A. Brian?
Thank you, Jenny and Lori, for joining us today and sharing with us all your incredible knowledge on just grants and how to obtain some of this funding that a lot of teachers are really unsure where to even start and begin. So with your help in creating this funding matrix and giving us a framework for an example grant form is just such a huge help, and we're really excited to share that. Now, I do have a couple of questions that did pop in through here in the forum, and one of them is, can schools apply for these grants individually or just the districts?
Great question. So, you know those last URLs, teachers can, principals can, so those are definitely school. The big federal grants, those go to the districts, and then the schools, so you really want to make sure that your district is applying for it, and then the schools can benefit from those. But there's one difference. The 21st Century Community Learning Center, you as a school can apply, but remember when Lori was talking about that, do it with your local Girls and Boys Club, a faith-based organization, a community center. You kind of, as a school, work with other entities in your community, and that makes it really strong for you to get that grant, because then other community organizations can use the whatever you purchase as well. And sometimes, you know, maybe your school can't, you know, it's dangerous and it can't be available after school or at night, but the Girls and Boys Club may be open, or the church may be open, or someplace else. So that's why it's really good to work with your community organization. So that one can be applied by schools. But those URLs that I showed you right at the end, go for those for the school grants for competitive. But remember, the low-hanging fruit is the formula money that your school district gets that must go to you if you have those particular students.
That's great. Thank you. Another great question that came through is, if a child has an IEP and uses a scholarship to attend a private school, can they still get funding under IDEA through the public school?
That's an interesting one. You know what? I am going to beg off because I've never had that question before, and it is a great question. And what I would like to do, Brian, if you can find out who that person is, and I will look that up after our webinar closes, and I will get back to you. That is a great question.
That was a really good question. Yeah, they're looking for a loophole, and it sounds like hopefully there could be one for them, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. That is really a great question.
Another one that came in is, I'm an IT professional who's interested in starting a program that would allow me to share my love of coding with students. Is there funding out there for after-school programs, summer camps, etc.?
So two fundings that we went over today. One of them would be that 21st Century Community Learning Center money, because that totally is an after-school program. The other is this new Computer Science for All. As soon as we know how that is going to be distributed, that is a definite possibility. I would assume it will start being distributed July 1st with the new budget. We haven't heard for sure, you know, and we will let Wonder Workshop know as soon as we get that information so they can post that. But that's a big one. There's actually another one to think about. The federal government gives 25% of the Title I money and the special ed money. They give that money out in July 1st, or, you know, that week, for summer school programs. And remember, Title I and special ed money can be used for STEM activities. So coding would be a STEM activity. So that's another set of money.
Great, thank you. Trey asked, were the templates included in the presentation? And no, they are not. We are actually going to be sharing with you the matrix and the template as well. After all of this, it's currently in the hands of our designers, and we are going to get that out to you as soon as possible. But because of Trey's wonderful suggestion, which was how can we continue this conversation beyond what we're conversing about here today. We were discussing in the chat forum, and I'm going to be creating a topic within our Wonder League forum on this exact point. So that will be able to answer any questions. So if there aren't any further questions, we are going to go ahead and we're going to stop recording here, but we will remain in the chat room to answer any questions via the chat. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We're more than happy to answer. And with that said, I cannot thank Lori and Jenny enough for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure having both of you here today joining us. And we are very excited to have learned everything that we have from your knowledge. So if you have any last minute questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat forum topic window, and we are happy to answer them. Otherwise, be sure to get your schools to sign up for the Wonder League. As you know, before July 1st, you will have an opportunity of winning $10,000 grant for your school that will help be able to fund your robotics program. So with that said, please feel free to hang out here, ask any questions, but I'm going to hit stop. And again, thank you for joining us today.